Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard my wife Darla's voice calling from inside our modest two-story house. "Danny, get in here, now!" I wiped my hands on an old rag, staring at the rusted undercarriage of my 15-year-old Dodge pickup. The neighborhood around me screamed suburban perfection, manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, the kind of place where everyone pretended their lives were Instagram-worthy. But my truck, leaking oil onto the pristine driveway, told a different story. "Danny Morrison, I swear to God, if you don't get in here right now." Yeah, I'm coming," I muttered, grabbing my beer from the truck's tailgate. At 37, I'd learned that when Darla used that tone, resistance was futile. 15 years of marriage had taught me to pick my battles. I pushed through the front door and froze. The living room was packed with people, all staring at me with those fake smiles that made my skin crawl. A homemade banner hung crooked above the fireplace. "Happy 37th birthday, Danny." "Surprise!" they all shouted in unison, though the enthusiasm felt as genuine as a politician's promise. Darla rushed over, her perfectly styled blonde hair bouncing as she grabbed my arm. She looked stunning in her navy dress, the one that cost more than my monthly truck payment. "I can't believe you forgot your own birthday party." I hadn't forgotten. I'd been hoping she had. The usual suspects filled our modest living room. Darla's mother, Verna, a woman who could freeze hell with a single glance, standing next to her spineless husband, Don. My coworkers from Midwest manufacturing clustered near the kitchen, nursing beers and looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. And there, holding court by the window, was Winston Caldwell, my boss, our regional manager, and apparently the guest of honor at my own damn party. Winston was everything I wasn't: tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He owned the lakeside mansion across town, drove a BMW that purred like a contented cat, and had the kind of confidence that came from never having to check his bank balance before buying groceries. "Danny boy," Winston boomed, raising his scotch glass. "The man of the hour. 37 and still kicking ass in the warehouse." I managed a smile that felt like broken glass. "Thanks, Winston. Didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Darla insisted I come. He placed his hand on her lower back, a gesture that lasted just a beat too long. "She's been planning this for weeks." Darla beamed up at him. "Winston's been such a help with the arrangements. He even suggested the caterer." Of course he did, because my wife couldn't plan a birthday party without consulting my boss. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who controlled my paycheck was now apparently controlling my personal life too. "Danny, dear," Verna's voice cut through the chatter like a rusty blade. "You really should clean up before greeting your guests. You smell like motor oil." "It's my house, Verna. I'll smell however I want." Don shifted uncomfortably beside his wife, but said nothing. He never did. 40 years of marriage to Verna had turned him into a human doormat. Now, Winston intervened smoothly. "Let's not spoil the party. Danny works hard for his money. Nothing wrong with getting your hands dirty for an honest living." The condescension in his voice made my teeth clench. Honest living, like I was some noble peasant grateful for scraps from his table. I excused myself to wash up, needing a moment away from the circus. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. Graying hair at the temples, lines around my eyes from squinting at inventory sheets, hands permanently stained from years of manual labor. When had I become this guy? When I returned, the party was in full swing. Conversations flowed around me, but I felt invisible, a ghost haunting his own celebration. I grabbed another beer and positioned myself where I could observe without being drawn into small talk. That's when I noticed it. Darla and Winston stood near the kitchen island, their heads close together as they talked. Nothing unusual there, except for the way her fingers briefly touched his wrist. The way she laughed at something he whispered, throwing her head back in that particular way she used to laugh at my jokes. The way his eyes lingered on her face, like he was memorizing every detail. They make a handsome couple, don't they? I turned to find Janet Phillips, one of Darla's coworkers from the HR department, standing beside me with a knowing smile. "Excuse me?" "Oh, you know what I mean. They just fit together, both so ambitious, so professional." Winston's really taken Darla under his wing lately. All those late meetings, the business dinners, the weekend conferences. She sipped her wine, watching my face carefully. Lucky girl, having such a dedicated mentor. My blood turned to ice water. Mentor? Well, what else would you call it? Though I suppose some people might get the wrong idea, seeing them together so much. You know how office gossip can be. Janet drifted away, leaving me standing there with the pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I watched Darla and Winston more carefully now, cataloging every glance, every casual touch, every shared smile that excluded the rest of us. During the cake cutting, Winston stood directly behind Darla as she made her wish for my birthday cake. His hands rested on her shoulders like he owned her. She leaned back against him, comfortable in a way that made my stomach churn. "What did you wish for?" someone called out. Darla's eyes found mine across the room. "That everyone gets what they deserve." The party wound down around 10. Guests filtered out with their obligatory thanks and promises to do this again soon. Winston was among the last to leave, shaking my hand with that firm grip businessmen practiced in the mirror. "Great party, Danny. You're a lucky man." His eyes flicked to Darla. "Take care of that wife of yours. She's special." After everyone left, Darla and I cleaned up in silence. She moved around the kitchen with mechanical efficiency, loading the dishwasher and wiping down counters. I nursed one last beer, watching her and trying to find the courage to ask the questions burning in my throat. "Good party," I finally said. She didn't look up from scrubbing a plate that was already clean. Winston seemed to enjoy himself. Her hands stilled for just a moment. "He's a good friend, to both of us." "Is he?" Now she did look at me, her green eyes sharp and defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just seems like you two have gotten pretty close lately." "He's my boss too, Danny. We work together. Is that a crime?" I wanted to push, to demand answers to questions I wasn't ready to ask. Instead, I finished my beer and headed upstairs. Some conversations were better had in daylight, when liquid courage couldn't be blamed for the things we said to each other. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Darla's breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the image of Winston's hands on her shoulders, or the way she'd looked at him like he was the answer to prayers I didn't know she'd been making. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd start paying closer attention to my wife's new friendship. Something told me I wasn't going to like what I discovered. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Darla's phone buzzing on her nightstand. She grabbed it quickly, checking the message with the kind of urgency usually reserved for family emergencies. "Work?" I asked, though it was barely 6 a.m. "Winston needs me to come in early. Big presentation today." She was already out of bed, heading for the shower. "There's coffee in the kitchen." I watched her rush around the bedroom, selecting her outfit with more care than usual. The black skirt that hugged her hips just right, the silk blouse that brought out her eyes, the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas, the expensive stuff she claimed to save for special occasions. Must be some presentation. She paused in applying her lipstick. "It's important, Danny. This could mean a promotion for me." After she left, I sat at our kitchen table with my coffee, staring at the remnants of last night's party. A few forgotten napkins, a wine glass with lipstick on the rim, the lingering scent of expensive cologne that definitely hadn't come from me. I'd been married to Darla long enough to recognize the signs I'd been ignoring. The new clothes. The sudden interest in working late. The way she'd started going to the gym religiously, claiming she needed to feel good about herself. The phone calls she took in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones about work stuff. At Midwest Manufacturing, I supervised a crew of 12 guys in the shipping department. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave me a sense of purpose. I'd worked my way up from the loading dock over 15 years, earning respect through reliability rather than politics. But that morning, walking through the office section on my way to the warehouse, I felt every conversation stop as I passed. Coworkers, who usually greeted me with casual waves, suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. The receptionist, normally chatty, barely acknowledged my presence. In the break room, I poured coffee and pretended to read safety bulletins while listening to fragments of conversation from the table behind me. "Saw them at Romano's last week, his own birthday party. Can you believe? Poor guy has no idea." I turned around slowly. 3 women from accounting sat there, their voices dropping to whispers when they saw me looking. "Morning, ladies. How's everyone doing?" "Fine, Danny," said Karen, the senior accountant. "Just fine. How are you holding up?" Holding up. Like I was recovering from surgery or dealing with a death in the family. "I'm good, Karen. Why wouldn't I be?" The women exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Karen cleared her throat. "No reason. Just, if you ever need to talk." I spent the morning trying to focus on inventory reports, but my mind kept wandering to those half-finished conversations. By lunch, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who to ask. Terry Kowalski owned Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar 3 blocks from the plant, where half our workforce went to decompress after their shifts. Terry and I had been friends since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world with our fists. He'd been a better boxer than me, good enough to go semi-pro before a shoulder injury ended those dreams. Now he served beer and listened to other people's problems. I found him restocking bottles behind the bar, preparing for the after-work crowd. "Danny boy, little early for you, isn't it?" "Need to talk, Terry, and I need you to be straight with me." He studied my face, then poured 2 shots of whiskey. "This about Darla?" The fact that he didn't need more context told me everything I needed to know. I knocked back the shot, feeling it burn away the last of my denial. "How long have people been talking?" "Couple months, maybe longer. You know how it is. Rumors start small, then grow legs." Terry leaned against the bar, his expression sympathetic. "I was hoping it was just bullshit gossip." "But you don't think it is?" "Danny, I've seen her car at the Marriott downtown, twice, middle of the afternoon on days when you're at work." The room tilted slightly. "You sure it was her car?" "Blue Honda Civic, license plate that starts with DLM, Darla Louise Morrison." "Yeah, I'm sure. And before you ask, yes, I saw him too. Winston Caldwell, walking out of the hotel like he owned the place." I poured myself another shot with hands that barely shook. "Why didn't you tell me?" What was I supposed to say? "Hey, buddy, I think your wife's screwing your boss." You would have punched me in the face and never spoken to me again. He was right. I would have. "What else do you know?" Terry sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "There's talk around town. Expensive dinners at places you two never go. Shopping trips where she's buying lingerie that costs more than most people's car payments. And Danny, last weekend, when you were visiting your sister in Cleveland, they were seen together at that new French place on the east side." I remembered that weekend. Darla had claimed she was having a girls' night with her sister. When I'd called Saturday evening, she'd sounded breathless, distracted. She'd said they were at a loud bar, and she couldn't hear me well. "I'm sorry, man, I really am." I stared at my reflection in the bar mirror, seeing a man who'd been living in willful ignorance. "I need proof, real proof, not just gossip and sightings." "What kind of proof?" "The kind that holds up in divorce court." Terry nodded slowly. "I might know a guy. Private investigator. Used to be a cop before he got tired of the politics. He's discreet, and he's good." Set it up. That afternoon, I went through the motions of supervising my crew, but my heart wasn't in it. Every time someone looked at me with pity in their eyes, I wanted to scream that I wasn't some pathetic cuckold who deserved their sympathy. I was a man who'd been lied to, betrayed by the person who was supposed to have my back, no matter what. When my shift ended, instead of heading home, I drove to the Marriott downtown. I sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, watching the entrance like a detective on a stakeout. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Terry was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation for everything. At 7:30, Winston's BMW pulled into the lot. He walked into the hotel with the confidence of a man who owned the world. 20 minutes later, Darla's Honda arrived. She parked 3 spaces away from his car, far enough apart that casual observers wouldn't connect them, close enough for convenience. She'd changed clothes since this morning. Gone was the conservative work outfit, replaced by a red dress I'd never seen before. She walked into that hotel like she was heading to the most important meeting of her life. I sat there for another hour, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When they finally emerged, separately, Winston first, then Darla 10 minutes later, I had all the proof I needed. Darla's hair was mussed, despite her attempts to fix it. Her lipstick was gone. She walked to her car with the satisfied gait of a woman who'd gotten exactly what she came for. I followed her home from a distance, watching her park in our driveway and walk into our house like nothing had happened. By the time I got inside, she was in the kitchen, humming while she prepared dinner. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" She kissed my cheek, the same casual peck she'd given me every day for 15 years. Fine. Yours? Busy. Really busy. Winston had me working on that presentation until almost 7. She didn't even blink while lying to my face. I'm exhausted. I watched her move around our kitchen, this woman I'd loved since we were 22 years old, and realized I was looking at a stranger. The Darla the first D married would never have cheated. She would never have looked me in the eye and lied with such casual ease. This Darla, this new version, was someone I didn't know at all. Danny, you're staring at me. Just thinking how beautiful you are. She smiled, pleased by the compliment. You're sweet. Go wash up for dinner. As I headed upstairs, I heard
Second Instagram, 47 posts, all of her. You built her a shrine. You posted her on my birthday.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
her phone buzz. She answered it quickly, her voice dropping to that intimate tone I used to think was reserved for me. Hi, yes, I just got home. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Line Hugeti. I stood frozen on the stairs, listening to my wife discuss our marriage like it was a minor inconvenience to be managed. Tomorrow I would call Terry's private investigator. Tomorrow I would start building the case that would end this marriage and hopefully salvage what was left of my dignity. But tonight, I would sit across from my cheating wife at our dinner table and pretend I still believed in the lie we'd been living. The private investigator's name was Rick Santori, and he looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for the role. Mid-50s, weathered face, clothes that had seen better decades. His office above a pawn shop downtown smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. Cheating spouse cases, Rick said, leaning back in his creaky chair. 90% of my business. The other 10% is insurance fraud, but that's not nearly as entertaining. I slid a manila envelope across his desk. Everything I know so far. Dates, times, locations, my wife Darla Morrison, and my boss Winston Caldwell. Rick flipped through the papers, nodding occasionally. Married 15 years, no kids, both work at Midwest Manufacturing. She's HR, he's regional manager, classic power dynamic affair. He looked up at me. What do you want to accomplish here, Danny? Divorce? Revenge? Just knowing for sure? All of the above. Fair enough. My rate is $200 a day plus expenses. I'll need a retainer of $1,500 to get started. I wrote the check, watching 15 years of careful savings disappear with my signature. But some things were worth the investment. How long will this take? Week, maybe 2. Depends how careful they're being. From what you've told me, they're not exactly running a covert operation. Over the next 10 days, Rick called with regular updates. Photos of Darla and Winston entering the Marriott. Video of them at Romano's, feeding each other dessert like teenagers. Credit card receipts showing Winston paying for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases that never made it home to me. The worst part wasn't the evidence itself. It was how sloppy they'd been. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Darla would come home with new earrings and claim she'd bought them herself. She'd mentioned conversations with Winston about topics that had nothing to do with work. She'd started wearing perfume to the grocery store. Meanwhile, at work, the whispers followed me everywhere. I'd walk into the break room, and conversations would stop. Coworkers who used to joke around with me now treated me with the careful politeness reserved for the terminally ill. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon, when I overheard 2 guys from maintenance talking by the loading dock. Poor bastard's the last to know, said Mike Torino, a guy I'd considered a friend. Everyone else figured it out months ago. Should someone tell him? Asked the other guy, someone I didn't recognize. Hell no. Not my marriage, not my problem. Besides, maybe he knows and just doesn't care. Some guys are into that cuck shit. I stepped around the corner, and both men froze like deer in headlights. Something you boys want to share with me? Mike's face went red. Danny, hey, we were just what? Discussing my personal life? Taking bets on how long it'll take me to figure out my wife's fucking my boss? The new guy muttered something about getting back to work and disappeared. Mike stood there looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Look, Danny, I'm sorry. We didn't mean, how long have you known? Known what? I grabbed his shirt and pushed him against the concrete wall. Mike was bigger than me, but I had 15 years of suppressed rage giving me strength. Don't play stupid with me. How long have you known about Darla and Winston? Jesus, Danny, calm down. I don't know anything for sure. It's just rumors. Bullshit. You were just telling your buddy here that I'm the last to know. So tell me, what exactly do I not know? Mike's eyes darted around, looking for escape routes. There was a company party last month, the one for the quarterly sales meeting. You were sick, remember? Food poisoning or something? I remembered. Darla had gone without me, claimed it was important for her career. What happened at the party? They disappeared together. For like an hour. People noticed. And when they came back, Darla's dress was wrinkled and Winston had lipstick on his collar. I let go of Mike's shirt. Who else saw this? Danny, come on. Who else? Most of the office staff. Look, maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were just talking business somewhere private. Yeah, maybe. I walked away, leaving Mike to wonder if he'd just ended a friendship or started a war. That evening, Rick called with his final report. Got everything you need, he said. Photos, video, financial records showing Winston's been paying for everything from hotel rooms to jewelry. Your wife's been living a double life, and she's been doing it on his dime. Send me everything. Already in the mail. Danny, there's something else. Something you might not want to hear. Tell me. This isn't their first rodeo. I did some digging into Winston's background. He's been married 3 times, divorced twice under similar circumstances. There's a pattern here. He targets married women in his company, usually in subordinate positions, uses his power to seduce them, then moves on when he gets bored or when the situation gets too complicated. My hands tightened on the phone. You think he's done this before at our company? I'd bet money on it. A guy like Winston doesn't suddenly develop a taste for married women at age 48. This is his thing. After hanging up, I sat in my truck in the driveway, staring at our house. Through the kitchen window, I could see Darla moving around, probably making dinner. She'd ask about my day, kiss my cheek, and lie to my face about how she'd spent her afternoon. But this time would be different. This time, I had ammunition. I walked into the house and found Darla exactly where I'd expected. Standing at the stove, stirring something that smelled like the pasta sauce she made when she felt guilty about something. Hi, honey. You're later than usual. Had some things to take care of. She turned to look at me, and for just a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Everything okay? You look upset. Just tired. Long day. We ate dinner in relative silence, making small talk about her mother's latest complaints and the weather forecast for the weekend. Normal married couple conversation, if you ignored the elephant sitting at the table with us. After dinner, while Darla was in the shower, I sat at my computer and opened Rick's email. Dozens of photos and video files, each one a nail in the coffin of my marriage. There was my wife, kissing another man in the parking lot of the Marriott. There she was, holding hands with Winston as they walked through the mall. There they were, entering his lakeside mansion while I was at work, trusting her to be faithful. I printed everything. Every photo, every receipt, every piece of evidence that proved what I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe.
When Darla came downstairs in her robe, hair still damp from her shower, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the evidence spread out like a poker hand. She saw the photos and stopped dead in her tracks. Danny, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been fucking my boss for months? That half the town knows about it? That you've been lying to my face every single day? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air.
Then, to my amazement, her expression shifted from shock to defiance. Yes, I'm having an affair. Yes, it's with Winston. And you know what? I'm not sorry. The honesty hit me harder than any lie could have. Not sorry? No, I'm not. Do you want to know why? Because Winston makes me feel alive again. He makes me feel beautiful, desired, important. When's the last time you looked at me, like I was anything more than a roommate who splits the bills? I stared at this woman I'd loved for 15 years, seeing her clearly for the first time. So this is my fault? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying we've been sleepwalking through this marriage for years, and Winston woke me up. By buying you jewelry and fucking you in hotel rooms. By treating me like I matter. When's the last time you bought me jewelry, Danny? When's the last time you took me somewhere nice for dinner? When's the last time you made me feel like you wanted me, instead of just needed me? The questions hung in the air between us like smoke. I could have pointed out that Winston had a regional manager's salary while I made warehouse wages. I could have reminded her of the 15 years I'd worked overtime to pay for this house, her car, the life we'd built together. I could have mentioned the vacations I'd skipped, the hobbies I'd abandoned, the dreams I'd deferred so she could have everything she wanted. Instead, I gathered up the photos and stood up from the table. Pack a bag, Darla. I want you out of here tonight. Danny, wait. No, we're done. You want Winston? Go have him. But you don't get to have both of us. She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of a woman who'd been caught and was angry about the consequences. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Hotel, your mother's house, Winston's place. Not my problem anymore. As she packed her things, slamming drawers and muttering about how unreasonable I was being, I stood in our bedroom doorway and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. The marriage was over. The lies were finished. Now I could start planning what came next. And what came next, I decided, was going to be very unpleasant for both of them. Word of Darla moving out spread through Midwest manufacturing faster than a chemical spill. By Friday morning, I could feel the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation that stopped when I walked by. Some looks held pity, others curiosity, and a few, from the guys who'd known but never said anything, carried something that might have been guilt. I was reviewing shipping schedules in my office when my phone rang. Danny, this is Winston. I think we need to talk. The ball's on this guy. I don't think we do. Look, I understand you're upset, but we're both adults here. We work for the same company. We need to find a way to handle this professionally. Professionally? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You want to talk about professionalism? You've been screwing my wife for months, and now you want to have a professional conversation about it? Danny, I know how this looks. It looks like my boss used his position to seduce my wife, then made me a laughingstock in front of everyone I work with. How exactly do you think we should handle that professionally, Winston? There was a pause. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from conciliatory to cold. I think you need to consider your position here very carefully. You're upset, which is understandable, but don't let your emotions compromise your career. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Shut up and take it, or find yourself unemployed. Are you threatening my job? I'm suggesting that discretion might be in everyone's best interest, including yours. I hung up on him. An hour later, I got called to HR, not Darla's department. She'd apparently taken a few days of personal leave, but her supervisor, a thin woman named Patricia Hendricks, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Danny, please sit down. I understand there's been some personal difficulties between you and your wife. Is that what we're calling it? Patricia shuffled papers nervously. The company has policies about workplace relationships and their impact on the work environment. We're concerned that this situation might create complications. What kind of complications? Well, there's been some talk, rumors. It's creating a distraction for other employees. Let me get this straight. My boss has an affair with my wife, and I'm the one creating a distraction? No one's saying it's your fault, Danny, but we need to find a way to minimize the impact on workplace morale. I leaned back in my chair, studying Patricia's uncomfortable expression. What are you proposing? We think it might be best if you took some time off. Paid leave, of course. Just until things settle down. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. Give everyone time to move past this unfortunate situation. I stood up slowly. Patricia, let me ask you something. If I took my wife to company parties, introduced her to my coworkers, built relationships with people based on the assumption that my marriage was solid, and then discovered she'd been cheating with her boss while everyone knew about it but me, would you consider that an unfortunate situation? Danny, please. Would you consider it reasonable for me to be angry? Would you think I might have some legitimate grievances about how this was handled? Patricia's face was getting redder by the minute. Of course, but then why am I the one being asked to leave? It's not punishment, it's just easier to get rid of the warehouse supervisor than the regional manager. I get it. I walked out of HR and straight to Terry's bar. It was barely noon, but I needed a drink and a friendly face. That was quick, Terry said, pouring me a whiskey without being asked. Figured you'd last at least until the weekend. Forced leave. They want me out of sight until the gossip dies down. Bastards. What are you going to do? I knocked back the whiskey and thought about it. What was I going to do? I could take their paid leave, hide at home like a wounded animal, and hope everyone forgot about my humiliation by the time I came back. I could look for another job, start over somewhere else where people didn't know my story, or I could fight back. Terry, you still have contacts in the local media. Some. Why? How would you like to help me burn down Winston Caldwell's perfect little world? Terry's grin was predatory. Now you're talking my language. No, we spent the next 2 hours planning. Terry knew a reporter at the local paper who specialized in business scandals. He also had connections with some of Winston's previous victims, women who'd been transferred or fired after their affairs with him ended badly. No, here's what I'm thinking, I said, sketching out the plan on a bar napkin. We don't just expose the affair, we expose the pattern. Show that this is how Winston operates, how the company enables it, how they protect him while punishing everyone else. No, that's a hell of a story. But you sure you want to go nuclear like this? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. I thought about Darla's defiant face when she'd told me she wasn't sorry, about Winston's casual threat to my job, about Patricia's suggestion that I was the problem that needed to be managed. I'm sure. That afternoon, I drove to Winston's lakeside mansion. I'd been there once before, for a company barbecue 2 summers ago. It was the kind of place that screamed wealth. Sprawling grounds, 3-car garage, a dock with a boat that cost more than most people's houses. I parked at